From 1946 until 1948, American doctors carried out a number of human experiments in Guatemala. The goal of the study was to observe whether penicillin had a use in preventing these transmissions of STIs, as well as to discover any other potential treatments. At least 1,300 people were infected, and at least 83 people are known to have died during the study. But many more may have been unknowingly infected, including the children of those affected.
So they knowingly injected people who didn't have STDs with STDs just to see if they could spread them to their husbands and wives
350,000 people
without their knowledge.
To see if the STD was spreadable, or to see if they were able to prevent its spread?
To prevent, so they would give them the STD to make sure they had it, then they would give them their magic miracle vaccine, and then send them out to their husband, and then wait a while, and then call the husband in and test him.
Wow! And they knew it was happening. They
no,
knew they were.
The people had no idea. They thought they were just getting vitamin B shots or something stupid. Like, oh, it's nothing.
At the Terre Haute prison in Indiana, 240 prisoners were consensually enrolled in a study and infected with gonorrhea.
A big pharma wouldn't do evil things. They do only ethical experiments.
They do it on prisoners because they don't count as people to most people.
That's right.
And the National Mental Health Hospital were chosen for the venues of the studies.
They can't consent. They don't have the mental capacity to consent.
Access to these people was obtained through bribing and bartering with those in positions of power. Even then, the doctors never fully explained what they were going to do. As can be seen in the botched Terre Haute prison experiment, it is difficult to medically induce such diseases. So instead, the researchers used sex workers who already had syphilis to infect the men. Guatemala was in part selected.
They hired hookers.
Oh my god! So they couldn't. They couldn't get it. They couldn't get it. They couldn't do it.
Of course, right? So when you have sex, like the fluids and your vagina will like rip and tear a little bit during sex.
I'm confused why they couldn't just inject it into somebody, but it has more to do with maybe the amount that happens during sex or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I have no. They obviously had no clue.
There were some problems. Transmission of syphilis proved to be ineffective for Cutler's study. What's more, the prisoners proved to be difficult to control and deal with.
What a shock.
Cutler got in contact with the director of the National Insane Asylum, Carlos Salvador, who offered access to his patients as subjects. The bulk of those who contracted syphilis would be psychiatric patients.
They have to hold their heads up just to get the photographs.
Carried out direct inoculations made from syphilis bacteria poured onto the men's faces, forearms, or penises to help ensure infection.
Putting it in their eyes to see what would happen.
To the sex workers who had syphilis was paid for by the study. If such methods did not work, the doctors would go to extremes to induce infections, including injecting the disease into the spines of the subjects. From the writings and comments of those involved in the study,
because that's what they think. Hitler went crazy because he had syphilis that was untreated. It makes you go like schizophrenic.
Cutler was very much under the impression that he had a limited time to prove his study was effective, which led him to be willing to attempt harmful additional methods of infecting the unwilling. These artificial infections were done without any regard to the patient's well-being. They were also not done in a sterile setting and seemingly done in the most disturbing of ways. One example can be found in the case of a psychiatric patient by the name of Berta. In February of 1948, Berta was injected in her left arm with syphilis. She would develop red bumps around the injection sites, all whilst suffering from scabies. Berta was not treated for syphilis until 3 months after her injection. Soon after, on the 23rd of August, Dr. Cutler wrote that Berta appeared as if she was going to die, but he didn't specify why. That same day, he put gonorrheal pus from another male subject in both of Berta's eyes, as well as in her urethra and rectum. He also reinfected her with
fucking
syphilis.
Psychopaths pretending to be doctors.
Later, Berta's eyes were filled with pus.
This is unreal. Holy shit.
From the gonorrhea, and she was bleeding from her urethra. 3 days later, on the 27th of August, Berta passed away. In order to obtain a controlled sample for comparison, the researchers obtained healthy samples from a children's orphanage. Whilst not as grotesque as the treatment of the
why not kids? Use kids. They're,
it yet again highlights the researchers' approach to extracting what they require from the people of Guatemala and especially of those in a vulnerable situation. Of the approximately 1,300
It's just 5 days after Christmas.
Yeah.
people
Well, what do you
known
think
to
they
have
got
been
the fucking
subject to the
gonorrhea shoved in her
experiments,
eyeballs?
less than 700
Just
are
Santa's
known
liver.
to have received some form of treatment. Usually, this was in the form of penicillin, but as seen in the
So all
tragic
these
example of Berta,
doctors that were
not
helping
every
they
subject
thought they were
was
doing the
given
greater good,
treatment,
socialism.
either at all or an
Few
adequate
people might
dose.
suffer, but it's going to help
It is
everyone
known
in the
that
long run.
83 of the subjects died. What is less clear is the fate of those that went on to infect others, unaware that they had contracted syphilis.
Yeah.
The researchers would often call the disease they were researching bad blood, a catch-all term for all manner of illnesses. Whilst the study officially ended in 1948, a number of the researchers remained to continue to take samples. Dr. Carlos Salvador continued to obtain lumbar puncture samples. As for Dr. John Cutler, he continued his work in studying venereal diseases. In 1949, he moved on to study in India as part of the World Health Organization program.
Oh, the WHO had a hand in this?
Assistant
What a
Surgeon
surprise.
General.
So I don't know if you know, but the WHO just put a memo forward that they want all the first world civilized countries to adopt the vaccine passport on your phone, or you're not allowed to travel to different countries.
Mm-hmm. I did see that. Well, this is different than the Tuskegee, right?
Yes, this is a different one.
So
there's so many.
But they're doing them at the same time. It says so this one says the Tuskegee experiment began in 1932.
Yeah.
So they already knew what was going to happen.
They don't care. No, they don't. That's the point. They don't. They're inhuman. Look, they're all smiling.
It says in 1972 the Tuskegee experiment shut down, but I'm so confused because this is
they shut down on paper.
46. Like, these are literally happening at the same time. They just did it in Guatemala. But it sounds like they're just like, okay, so they bring in a sex worker to give everyone STDs. They got their STDs. This person looks like she's about to die. So let's get more pus from these sores and rub it in her.
Use out of her as they could before she croaks.
What's the point if they die? Weren't they trying to save them?
No, they don't care if they die. They're just psychopaths being psychopaths and torturing people.
It's that. It's so weird because it's that.
Like the German crazy doctor, he would take your leg off and sew it onto your shoulder just to see if he could do it. He just wanted to see, like, the first heart transplant. So everybody that's had their life saved by a heart transplant has Hitler to thank. Because the Germans were just taking Jews and they're just taking organs and body parts and just sewing them onto different places just to see if they could do it. And they figured, hey, we can actually do it with a heart.
Wow.
And then America captured all those scientists and doctors instead of killing them, hired them.
Yeah, that's where we started NASA.
That's NASA.
Yeah. Okay, let's keep going. This is disturbing.
But also in the 1960s, Cutler joined onto the infamous Tuskegee experiment.
Dr. John Cutler. Oh, look, it's hilarious that we stopped to talk about Tuskegee right before they started talking about it. So he's the same one, Dr. John Cutler. We'll keep playing. I'm going to Google it in the background.
We do have a video on this subject.
Look how happy he is.
For the purposes of this video, we will briefly explain what it was. The Tuskegee experiment was a 40-year-long study into the effects of syphilis on African-American men, fueled by racist beliefs and hiding the subject's diagnosis. To this day, there persists a rumor that the participants were deliberately infected with syphilis during the experiment through injections. It was not the case that the subjects of the Tuskegee experiment were infected by the researchers, though it is not hard to see where such a myth could come from when the likes of Cutler were involved. Despite being an unnecessary, scientifically flawed and inhumane study, Cutler would later in life defend the Tuskegee study.
Oh, really?
When speaking about the study in a 1993 documentary, he said, "It was important that they were supposedly untreated, and it would be undesirable to go ahead and use large amounts of penicillin to treat the disease because you'd interfere with the study. It is thanks to the work of Professor Susan Mokotov-Reverby that much of what we know about the Guatemala study came to light. When she was researching the Tuskegee study in 2005, she uncovered a collection of Cutler's papers which indicated that he had deliberately infected people.
2 years after he dies.
Yeah, that's what they wait for. That's why Pfizer wanted 75 years before they released the safety data because, we didn't know, we knew it was killing people, but he's dead now, so forget about it.
Mm-hmm.
People with syphilis. It soon led Reverby to realize that these papers related not to Tuskegee, but to Guatemala. In October of 2010, the Obama government formally apologized for the study. A commission was set up which concluded that the researchers breached not only the standards of today, but also of the time. It is important to note that only a few years prior had the world learned of the horrors of the Nazi human experiments, with many of those responsible brought to trial. In fact, the study was being carried out whilst the Nuremberg trials were well underway.